Duality is something that isn't new to me. I'm biracial, mixed, black. I more so identify as black, but I am a product of a white woman and a West African man. And my growing up between those identities and, my kind of vantage point on how my caregivers helped or hindered that.
What does it feel like to be an outsider in every room that you enter? To be born to a West African father and a white mother, mixed race in the 1990s, and never fully belong anywhere. To survive childhood abuse, neglect, and racism. To be silenced, body shamed, and told you're something to be dealt with instead of something to be nurtured. And then to become a therapist, a father, someone who rewrites the soundtrack of his own life. Welcome to It's Both, and I'm Nikki P., a therapist turned storyteller. Today, I'm talking with Johnzelle Anderson, a licensed therapist and author of Mixtape, a memoir. This conversation is about the messy middle of identity, about the both and of being biracial, bisexual, a therapist, and still healing. About life transitions from childhood trauma to thriving in adulthood, and from being silenced to claiming your voice. If you've ever felt like you don't fully belong anywhere, or if you are still unlearning trauma that you survived, this one is for you. And with that, let's jump in.
Well, I'm biracial and bisexual, so I think the identity as far as sexuality is concerned too is like dated and was with women up until last year, and I kind of came into knowing my bisexual identity throughout my marriage. And my marriage didn't end because of my sexual identity, but when
Mm-hmm.
it did end, I started dating men and started to be able to experience that duality of, I as a bisexual, having experiences with both. So yeah, I think even as a when people ask, well, what do you do? I say I'm a therapist and a storyteller, right? That duality between those two careers, they influence each other. They're not
Mm-hmm.
just like compartmentalized, but one impacts the other.
Mm-hmm.
Just like my race or my sexuality or what I do for work. All of that, we can't be in one box. And anytime we try to make everyone the same or um, fit people into a box, there's usually going to be some suffering that happens.
Yeah, yeah. I resonate so much with what you're saying. And even it's funny, like in my intro, like a lot of what I do, I'm a licensed therapist, but also storyteller. Like that's a lot of what I talk about. So I get that a lot. But I'm thinking about you growing up in that space, and I'm wondering because duality is so complex and it's something that a lot of times in child development, child's brains, they can't understand bothness, they can't understand these two opposing things existing at once. Like it takes quite a while for the brain to understand that. And I'm wondering for you, like, what did that feel like for you as a child, kind of being in between, and not even in between, but you are both in so many ways, but you
hmm
probably didn't recognize it or have language for it. So what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I think. Well, I often start with I think, and then I run it back and say I know that being both was something. The awareness of it came from other people trying to figure it out. When you're mixed, at least in my experience, Southwest Virginia in the 90s, people
Wow.
look at you and they ask, "What are you?"
Hmm.
Or "What are you mixed with?" Or, "I am black being raised in whiteness and you see my white mother and I'm black." And so it's like, whose kid is that? Or even as a father of a mixed race girl, the weirdest thing, I mean, I grew up mixed race black, but the weirdest thing was when my child was born very fair skinned with
Mm-hmm.
afro hair and my entire face,
Mm-hmm.
but not the same color. People would ask me whose child that was.
Hmm.
The identity that shaped me often was from other people trying to figure it out. So needing to have it's either I need to have it figured out or other people are going to figure it out for me and tell me what I am. And unfortunately, a lot of my life, I break the book down into sections. I use education words. So I have
Mm-hmm.
homeroom, miseducation, unlearning and graduation. So around the unlearning and graduation eras of the book is when I am defining my identity and I'm shedding the identities that others have defined for me.
Mm.
Um, it's in finding freedom because the your question was how do you make sense of that? Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of teachable moments from my caregivers about like, okay, well, you're this and that. Both of my parents are human beings, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And it was very clear from the beginning that I was something that was unwanted. And when I existed, I was something to be dealt with, not something to be nurtured. And that, of course, came out in how the decisions that they made. But the cool thing about being a father to, I'm a proud girl dad of a 6-year old who has my face, is that she will know her duality.
Mm.
And even though she's fair skinned, she won't identify herself as white because to identify herself as white would be to erase me.
Mm.
And so by defining my own identity and doing the work, say, through writing this book and continuing to be a storyteller, continuing to, like, through my therapy work, working with folks who exist at intersections. I am a more refined, self aware person to then be on her team to help her figure out who she's going to be. So it's not so much about like breaking a generational curse, but it's
Hmm.
about knowing better and doing better. So far, I would say I'm doing a really good job.
I think you're doing amazing. I mean, I think I'm even just thinking about on the psychological level of, I mean, there's just so many layers in what you've shared and in your story where I'm like, so much harm. I mean, what I would imagine a lot of harm done to you from a lot of different places, a lot of different people. And even not just because I don't want to downplay it at all, but having somebody ask, "What are you?" I can't imagine what viscerally, like, your body and your your soul felt in that moment. Like, did every time you get asked that and maybe even your daughter or you get asked that to this day, like, yeah, what does that feel like to get that question? Because I would imagine it just I don't know, it doesn't and I might be making assumptions, but, like, that feels like that would just hurt me every time somebody asked me that.
I think, there I go again. I know that you're getting to see me in real time. Like, I'm always evolving here.
Mhm.
And because I've been doing so many interviews about this book, I noticed that I will start a statement with I think, and then I have to pause myself because I know rather than I think.
Mhm.
But I know that when I was younger, Johnzelle was trying to stay out of the way.
Mm.
He was told by his caregivers that children are meant to be seen and not heard. If you speak up, you're going to get smacked across the face.
Mm.
Um, if you ask for too much, you're going to be scolded.
Mhm.
Be grateful that you have food, clothing, and shelter. There wasn't a lot of flexibility to expand.
Yeah.
But the hopeful thing was that I was always tapped into music. I had music. So throughout this story, the whole framework of the book is based around a playlist because I love music. And it's a double, someone said it was a double entendre, I guess, because mixtape is obviously a form of playlist, which I based the book around. But then the word mixtape has the word mixed in it, which is how I knew that that was going to be my book's title. So I had my music, and I also have books. Like I read currently over 100 books a year. I read 115 last
Whoa.
year, and uh, I love reading. And I had my books as a child, which gave me the ability to travel to different worlds. It gave me the ability to be loved, liked, and understood, even when I wasn't receiving that from my those around me consistently.
Mm.
And so when someone would say, like when I was younger, someone would say, well, what are you? Or what are you mixed with? Or whatever. It was complex because at home, and I tell people this, my first racists were my white caregivers.
Mm.
I was raised primarily by my mother and my maternal grandmother, white women. Um, my mother had a mixed race black child before I was born with an African American. My father is an immigrant from Sierra Leone, West Africa. So even though both men that she chose to have children with are black,
Mhm.
Mine was villainized. He was called, and whether he was a good person or not, I didn't get a chance to make the decision myself because from the beginning, visceral things. You'll read in the book. I mean, he wasn't, a saint. The point was, though, I'm being told that this man who's quite literally, I have his face, just like my daughter has my face. It's something about Sierra Leone. We got strong genes. I went to Sierra Leone in December with my daughter, and I'll tell you, the Africans, me being the in between, and my daughter being very fair skinned, when we were in the Freetown airport, we all had the same face, the same features. We are the genetics are strong. So imagine me as a child knowing that I look like this man who I don't know, who y'all
Yeah.
villainize, and you're calling him ape man, you're calling him
Mm.
Zulu this and all that, not knowing anything about Africans and how those things didn't match because you feel some kind of way about him. When you talk about him, you're talking about me because I look like him. So when you call him ugly, I guess I'm ugly. When say the N word and you're a white woman and you are using a slur, you're talking about me, right? So my embracing of the blackness was muted for a lot of my life because I was raised in whiteness. And to embrace blackness would have been to make myself even more of a target in a hostile environment. So a lot of that development happened in my 20s and now into my 30s because I had to unlearn that miseducation.
Hmm.
And so it's constantly evolving, and I will continue to do it through music and books because those have been constants for me. Most of the books that I read, of the 100 plus a year, the majority of them are by and about Black storytellers
Hmm.
because, the greater part of my life was, slanted towards whiteness. And, you know, my spirit is very much drawing me towards wholeness.
Mm.
And so, yeah, and I hope that by doing this work within, my daughter has an easier time knowing where she comes from. And that's why the dedication of the book is to her. It says, I wrote this, or when you pick this up someday, you'll know where I come from. And I hope that this is a way for you to, embrace who you are unapologetically. And I think that's a really cool thing of even if things didn't go smoothly for me, I found that I was worthy of the journey anyway. And even though it wasn't from the beginning, I can, you know, through a book, through a song, through a travel, through experiences, through being a parent, and through being a therapist, through being a storyteller, I can access these things. It's not too late. And it's just the beginning. I'm only 33. I'm only like a third of the way there. So
Yes.
there's plenty of
Oh,
time.
okay. A quick thing. If this conversation is resonating, I need your help. Reviews are how this show grows. They're how other people who are carrying too much and feeling too alone actually find the show. So please take 1 minute and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It's the single best way to support the show, and it would mean the world to me. Okay, now let's get back to the show. I love that outlook. And talk to me about your trip. Like when you went there, I think you said it was life changing. So, like,
Hmm.
talk to me about like what were you hoping to find there? What was your experience like?
Yeah, so I've been to West Africa 3 times now. And the first 2 times I went to Ghana, and I specifically went somewhere that wasn't where my father came from. So though I don't have a relationship with him, I know that he immigrated from Freetown, Sierra Leone, I believe in the late 70s, early 80s, to Virginia, which is where he eventually met my mother. And though I knew the place, I wanted to choose to connect with the continent of Africa, specifically West Africa, on my own terms, because that's the only way that I can do this. Those who created me did not give me the support in identity development. So I don't need a 23andMe. I don't need to talk to somebody that I don't even have a relationship with to be like, hey, tell me where the family lives or where about
Mhm.
I don't need that because in the last encounter that I had with my father, I asked, where in West Africa are you from? He said, Freetown, Sierra Leone. I tucked that away in my brain. And when I was ready, I went there. So I went to Ghana twice on my own to connect with the continent, to connect with to go to the slave castles, to hold space and to understand that there's a spiritual connection with my African ancestors, despite not having a familial connection through my father. And I felt at home from the beginning. The second I stepped off the plane into the Accra airport, I felt, they say Akwaba, which means welcome in Twi. And I felt at home, the food, the culture. I'm working on a second memoir. I'm going to write it in verse, though, so in poetry. But the working title is African. So speaking of duality,
Mhm.
half African, African. But I want to talk more about these travels to Ghana and Sierra Leone. But this last time I went in December, it was shortly after I got separated last year. We separated in July, and going through that few months of grief there afterwards because I was blindsided by it. I had already booked my trip to West Africa, in December, and so I was like, you know what, I'm taking my kid with me. And so at the last minute, I added her to the trip, and it was beautiful because the first leg of the trip was Sierra Leone for about 4 days. And it was the
Mhm.
first time I had been there, but it's the first time I'm going to this place that it all started from. But I'm also at a life transition of my marriage is over. I'm a single dad now, and I'm also encountering my roots in a more vivid way than ever before, and I have my child with me. So the magnitude of it hit me as I was there, but my daughter turned 6 years old in Sierra Leone.
Wow.
She won't ever have to be like, where do I come from? She's been where she comes from. I've been to the slave castle off the coast of Freetown, Sierra Leone with my daughter, knowing specifically holding space with the spaces where my ancestors were stolen. And I live in Virginia,
Mhm.
where like it's true when people say full circle, you can't get more full circle than that.
Yeah.
And so West Africa has given me so much. Those three trips were my soul is forever changed. And it's so cute when my daughter talks about Africa. She says Attica.
Oh.
And she asks about like the people who we met and saw there and things like that. The timing of it was is just very important. So yeah, I it's never too late to connect with something. And
Mhm.
I don't need like when people say, "Oh, well," people assume I connected with my father and ask questions. I have an iPhone. I have Google.
Mhm.
I have a bank
Yeah.
account. I can go and do whatever I want. And I find I go there open and I am shown what I need to see.
Mhm.
And that's a beautiful thing. So excited to see what continues to unfold here.
Yeah, and I mean, hearing about I'm just thinking about the magnitude of that trip and how like so many pieces that you named and the complexity and the layers of like not only are you're now like you said a single dad, you've ended you're out I shouldn't say you've ended, but you've had this relationship that meant a lot to
Hmm.
you that ended. You're going back to the place that your father is from and you're with your daughter and it's her birthday and just I mean,
Hmm.
the magnitude and the layers of feeling probably so connected and grateful that you're there with your daughter and that she's getting to experience this and on her birthday and it's
Hmm.
her roots and also probably the massive grief and the conflict that's happening all in the same moment while you're processing these things is just huge.
The conflict with my ex, we were separated maybe about 4 months at that time.
Mhm.
And conflict because, you know, you're in that like flip floppy stage of are we going to be
Yeah.
friends? Do we,
Yeah.
all of that. And that trip with the conflict, I came to the conclusion of don't speak to me unless it has to do with our daughter.
Mm.
Like it had to
Yeah.
be that. And so I got clarity based off of the conflict. And on top of that, the complexity was post separation, I was dating again.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
I
yeah.
was I was serial dating. So I had like a couple of different guys that I was dating while I was in Africa, I'm not in Africa, but like I was
Yeah.
talking, to some, and so all of this was just kind of going on at the same time. And but the gift of being able to get away, but it's this collision, this intersection of all of these different things.
Mhm.
And the thing I love about, first of all, we're therapists, right? You and I both. We we see these intersections and collisions of what life throws at people. but we also, as storytellers, we have the gift of being able to articulate and oftentimes show what real life is through the stories. I'm working on a novel right now, and it's more leaning into bisexual narratives, right? And so these experiences, this grief, this um, these identities, these complexities,
Mm-hmm.
though I wouldn't, for difficulties in life, since I have them, my gift has always been to take what is left and find something useful from it. And that's what Mixtape and Memoir is not dumping the trauma just for trauma's sake, but
Mm-hmm.
to entertain. I joke that my alter ego is a comedian, a DJ, a part-time assassin, and a librarian. And all of that is present in Mixtape
Uh-huh.
and Memoir, and I hope that it shows up in, well, I'm not going to say I hope, it will show up in everything that I write because I am multifaceted, but I get to be these different identities, and I think that's the spoiler, I guess, of Mixtape the Memoir is that I turned out okay. I
Mm.
turned out okay despite where it started. So, and because of that, I think the world will become better because my daughter's journey should be easier. She will get to benefit from the rich experiences that I've had. She doesn't have to go through the pain to learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
I can articulate it to her. Yeah, Africa 2025 was definitely a heavy one for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you shared because I'm like, that is all of us to an extent where we go, I have pieces of me that can be stupid and silly and like
Hmm.
light and enjoying the fun stuff in life. And then I can also talk about really hard, the most hard moments of my life, of somebody else's life,
Hmm.
going to the depths with somebody, feeling the immense grief or shame or guilt or whatever hard feelings we're having. And then we can order a coffee in the middle of all that. Like we can kind of like bring some levity. And then we also have to hold normal life alongside of all of that and
Hmm.
parenting and relationships. And I think, so many times, so many of us, we don't acknowledge the layers and the complexity and the duality. And when we don't acknowledge it, it feels like this internal tornado or this like confusing fog because we're like, wait, shouldn't I feel this or this? And it's like, well, I mean, you can feel all of it. It doesn't mean it's
Hmm.
easy, but acknowledging that, what I love, one of the many things that I love about, your story and what you're sharing in your memoir is like, you're not denying one to hold space for the other. Like,
Hmm.
you have space for all of those things. And while you might not have chosen to go through those things,
Hmm.
you are giving them the space that they had. And then you're creating something new from that, which I think is
Yeah.
just beautiful. And I'm wondering, like, what is the experience like now as a therapist? Because you're now helping people work
Mm.
through their own trauma, find a new way, rewrite their own story while you're also going through it yourself. And even the duality in that, like, what's that experience been like to be an expert and to be learning in the same moment?
Those things overlap each other a lot, and it's revealing itself to me the longer I do this. I've been a therapist over a decade now. First of all, every session I do teaches me something. Even though I'm teaching clients things, they're teaching me all the time. And things that maybe were dormant or muted or archived come up when they're ready. For example, I had been a therapist, and this is a trigger warning to listeners. I'm about to briefly mention molestation. So fast forward about 60 seconds if that's a trigger for you. I had counseled Black men who had been molested for years. I did not come to full awareness and write about my own experiences of being molested until I was writing Mixtape. And I talk about how that unfolded when I tell the story in the book. And the thing is, like, you can be helping people with something and not necessarily be completely tapped into what you have experienced or are experiencing, right? But on the flip side of that, my therapeutic approach has become more eclectic in that I am a narrative therapist, I'm a bibliotherapist because I
Mm,
read and I tell
yeah.
stories. So naturally, I'm gonna read books with my clients that are relevant. I'm gonna tell stories. My approach is, you know, of course, rapport first, but then self-disclosure is not something I'm uncomfortable with. And with the rapport, I know I can share anecdotes with clients to give modeling, to give perspective to what they go through. And hence the reason why I wrote a memoir, because as doing that over the years, my clients were like, Johnzelle, you need to write a book. What do you mean you were chased at gunpoint in the Walmart parking lot by your father as a child? That's some cinematic stuff that you should put in a book. And I was like,
Hmm.
okay, noted. So now it's in a book. So
Yeah.
yeah, it my clients teach me every day. I love it. Never and if I ever become jaded by it, I want someone to smack me in the face and tell me to stop being a therapist, because it blows my mind that my livelihood gets to be supported by people sharing their stories with me. I consider it a privilege. It will never, I hope it never, I never become jaded to the fact that people go out of their way to go on the internet or into a bookstore and buy my story. And not only that, they sit down and get off their phone and read my story.
Hmm.
Or in the case of the audiobook, they listen to my story, right? And they get to know me, and I may never meet them. That's why I love memoirs so much, because I get to spend time with someone's story. Even though I'm a therapist and I do that for a living, I never get bored of spending time with someone in an intimate way and hearing their story. It's so full circle in that too, that we get to be storytellers, we get to be therapists, we get to help, but we get to learn. And the same thing goes with literature and things like that. So I'm over here being all grateful and excited about life. Life is pretty darn good if I do say so myself, even though things could be tough, you know?
Hey, I want to pause for a second because if you are listening to this and feeling the weight of everything we're talking about right now, I made something for you. It's a companion meditation podcast called It's Both Guided Meditations. And it's not about clearing your mind or pretending everything's fine. It's for the moments when your thoughts are spinning, your body is tight, and you just need to come back to yourself. They're short meditations for real life, for when you're overwhelmed, anxious, or sitting in the bothness of it all. So search It's Both Meditations wherever you're listening right now. I promise it will help. Okay, let's get back to the episode. I see a lot of, I've seen it multiple ways. I mean, there's all kinds of therapists, right? And all kinds of
Hmm.
ways of interacting with therapy. But I think one of the most impactful things that I've seen is therapists who are also doing their own work. And to your point, you
Hmm.
don't have a problem with self disclosure.
Hmm.
And I think a lot about mentors and AA and a lot about recovery and how
Mm.
so much of that we can learn as therapists that a lot of therapists don't take on, right, and apply it to their work. And what I mean by that is a lot of times when you're in recovery, you have somebody who's been through an experience who is, yes, a therapist to you or a mentor or whatever, but there's another layer of understanding and connection and support
Hmm.
that can help somebody when you are willing, like one, when you've kind of gone through your own version of it, but also when you're willing to understand and share that with them. So I just think that that's really cool and so impactful, I'm sure, for your clients and your readers.
Yeah.
But I also love the idea of how you set up this memoir. So I guess what gave you the idea to do songs and I mean, you kind of alluded to it, but it's a mixtape, which I've never heard of any book being anyway set up like this. So talk to me about
Hmm.
how that came about and what it's like to read it.
Okay. I knew the title and the concept before I wrote a word. This is going to sound dramatic, but I would not be here if not for music and books. And I mean that because the world is ghetto, okay? Uh, it's rough. And some people escape
Mm-hmm.
with different ways, whether it be doom scrolling, whether it be cocaine, whether it be, going to the movies. I personally like to escape through music and reading. It's cheaper than crack. So I love music. Can't remember a time where I wasn't immersed in music. And so there was just some point where I was like, mixtape, title, boom. Um, but then also I am not a musician, but I I'm an imaginative person. I've always thought of, even from a child, I thought if there's a movie of my life, I'm not worried about who's gonna play me or whatever. I want to know what that soundtrack is
Mm.
and what are going to be the rhythms that carry the story forward. And when I went to go write my book, I was like, okay, I'm not making a movie of my life, but I'm writing my story. If I'm a storyteller, I want the elements of sound. I can do what people do with a movie with literature. So I wanted a literary version of the mixtape. So I said, okay, this isn't a table of contents. This is a playlist. At the front of the book, you get QR codes to Apple Music and Spotify. There's a real mixtape that goes with this book. It goes in order of the songs that are presented in the thing. I felt like, I don't know the specific terms, but like a producer or something where I'm like curating this playlist as I'm writing the book.
Mm-hmm.
The songs, when I was writing the book, the songs would evoke a memory. And then that might become the title track to that section. And I interchanged them and stuff like that. But there's not a table of contents, it's a playlist. There's not chapters, these are tracks of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So at the beginning of each track, you're going to get a cassette tape. If you're born after 1999, a cassette is a form of music media that has ribbons of tape that hold music on them, and you put them in a tape player and it plays the music. Okay.
Do you think
Anyway,
even 99? Like, I don't know. I was born in 90 and like I think I used mostly CDs.
yeah, well, if you don't know what a cassette tape is, get on Google and you can figure it out. Vintage, if you will. So each track begins with the cassette tape, and it has, I don't name my chapters. The track names are the song. So the opening scenes of my book, it says Notorious Thugs, which is a song by Notorious B.I.G. featuring Bone Thugs and Harmony, and it's the story of me being born. Now you might be like, well, what does you being born have to do with Notorious Thugs? Well, there's a line in that song that Biggie says, "Been in this shit since '92. Look at all the bullshit I've been through." What a cinematic way to open my story. Because hello,
Mm.
I was born in '92, and you about to see all the stuff I've been through.
Mm-hmm.
So when we make a mixtape or a playlist for somebody, it carries a theme, it evokes memories, it holds nostalgia. I wanted as a 90s kid to bring that nostalgia of music videos, karaoke machine, cassette tapes, boombox, talent shows, TLC, Mary J. Blige, like, but then also I brought in more recent things like the songs don't necessarily align with the chronological year that I'm talking about, it evokes a memory. I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
keep the quotes that I specifically pulled as originally I did in the book because copyright infringement. I learned that late in the game. But I did do a series on my Instagram. There's a highlight reel on my Instagram at Johnzelle underscore if you want to check it out. And it says mixtape, and you can go through track by track, and I will tell you why I chose each song for each track. Another fun thing is even if you don't want to do all of that, you can here or you open it up, okay, I'm on track 16 and here's the song. I'm gonna listen to the song either using my QR code or just pulling it up. I'm gonna listen to the song and then I'm gonna read what he has to say. You as the reader can figure out in your own way, because when we come to a story, we're not just doing what the author tells us, we bring our own experiences to the story that we read. And
Yeah.
as a storyteller, I don't want to tell you, I want to show you.
Mm.
The types of books that I like is, and why I love memoir so much is that I feel like I'm having an intimate conversation with somebody I may never meet. I love Trevor Noah's memoir, Born a Crime. He's one of the few mixed race people who I felt seen and understood by through reading. It's also why I wanted to write my own story because there's not a ton of mixed race memoirs that talk about that duality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important to add my experiences to the canon. But I get to be close with somebody through their words. And I wrote mine in a way where it feels like you're sitting down having a conversation with a friend. The cover of my book has a silhouette of me sitting on a bench with a boombox next to me, kind of leaning in, like, hey, I got something to tell you. And I do that with the sounds. I do that with humor. I do that with short scenes, longer scenes. I have interludes, okay? I was not playing around with this music theme. An interlude is when I break the fourth wall and I'm like, okay, so yes, I'm four here, but let me tell you what was really happening. I sometimes jump in with my clinical opinion
Hmm.
about something. That allows me to break the fourth wall without going out of character of who Johnzelle was in that part.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just to say something shady. Sometimes it's like, for example, I said roll down the window and then I do interlude. If you were born after a certain amount of time, let me tell you, we used to have to crank the windows down. Okay. I do a little interlude just to say this is what's going on because I want my reader to be taken care of.
Yeah.
Also, with telling trauma, I took care of my readers. So there is lighthearted, there is coming
Hmm.
of age, regular things. There is cringy. That fourth grade talent show, the cringiest moment of my entire life. And I was like, well, if I put it in a book, I have overcome it, right? I did it within the framework of this mixtape. So I set out to write a literary version of a mixtape and I succeeded. And it's my favorite thing I've ever written so far.
It's so fun. It's so amazing. I love, love, love that it literally captures all the facets, or I would imagine like most of the facets of who you are, which
Hmm.
is so cool because a lot of times I don't think we get that in stories, and
Hmm.
it's beyond just a story. Like it's your story and you have all these other layers that I haven't experienced anywhere else where you've got music, you've got a soundtrack, you're
Hmm.
breaking the fourth wall, like all those things that you said, which is so fun and
Hmm.
meaningful and impactful.
And trying to, not so much trying to do it in a way that no one else has done before, but doing it in my way. And if
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
doing it in my way, I'm the only one who can do it. And that's pretty
Of
cool
course, yeah.
to do something a little bit different. Yeah.
Yeah. What is something that you wish people would ask you about that they don't? Or something that you want to share that you often don't get to?
Excusing the fact that I've done a lot of interviews for this book, something that I want every person to understand is that you listener, you person coming across this podcast, this interview, or seeing it, I don't know if there's a video for it, you're worthy of reciprocity and connection. And when I say worthy, it doesn't mean it has to be earned. You're wired to connect. You're wired to have reciprocity. In this book, the thesis I explore is, in essence, unreciprocated relationships hurt because they're unsustainable. And my
Mhm.
story is a series of unreciprocated relationships. But I come out of the other side getting better at recognizing when something's unreciprocated and making decisions accordingly, right? But reciprocity is not a two-way street. I believe it's a three-way street. Now, how that would work logistically, don't ask me. I'm just talking. But it's we need to be loved, liked, and understood. Okay, that's what that reciprocity and connection means. We need to, as humans, we have the ability to give love, like, and understanding. We have the ability to receive love, like, and understanding. And the third way is we need to love, like, and understand ourselves. Mixtape and memoir is you're going to see Johnzelle craving, desiring, and does not know yet that he's worthy of love, like, and understanding in all three ways. Sometimes he's battling himself and not love, liking, and understanding himself. Sometimes he's wondering why those who he calls friend betray him. Sometimes he's wondering why uh, he feels like an outsider, or he's blatantly being abused, neglected, etc. Right? Connection being unreciprocated is going to hurt us because it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable because we're wired for connection. You are worthy of that. You don't have to earn it. Now, not everybody is going to give you that. That's entitlement. If you think, oh, give me love, like, and understanding, you're not entitled
Mhm.
to it. You're
Mhm.
worthy of it, meaning there's enough people, there's enough dynamics, there's enough
Yeah.
of us that we can find that connection. We can find love, like, and understanding all three ways in the place that we are in life. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Doesn't mean it's going to be a linear journey. But listener, you are worthy of reciprocity and connection. If anybody leaves my story with anything other than that, is that they're worthy of that. They're going to get examples of that and me seeking it. So hopefully through readers reading Mixtape and Memoir, even though they never meet me or talk to me, I want them also through the way that I've written this, I hope that they walk away feeling loved, liked, and understood. That is what I often get from reading books. And I think as a storyteller, you need to go beyond just telling the story or showing something, but you got to make the readers feel something. And it's an extension of what I'm worthy of. I'm worthy of love, like, and understanding. So even in giving, I want to make sure that someone is receiving, and it's a beautiful thing. So it's a long-winded, complex way of saying what do you want someone to know, but I think it's so important because there's a lot of people walking this earth who don't. In one of those three ways, that three-way street that we still haven't figured
Mm-hmm.
out logistically, is that if you don't feel loved, liked, and understood by others, you're going to have issues. If
Mm-hmm.
you are giving love, like, and or if you're receiving love, like, and understanding, and you love, like, and understand yourself, but you're not giving it,
Yeah.
you're going to have an issue because you're not contributing, right? If you are giving and receiving love, like, and understanding, but you don't love, like, and understand yourself, the other two are going to be affected. That's why we have lucrative careers as therapists, because a lot of if we break it down to that, that is
Yeah.
a lot of the things can come down to people not knowing their worthiness of connection, or they're trying to find it, and the people that they're dealing with are not picking up what they're putting down. So
Mm-hmm.
this isn't a how-to manual, and even though I'm a therapist, I don't write like a therapist, so it's not self-help. It's definitely my story, and humorous and entertaining, but um, yeah, I want people to know that. I think
Mm-hmm.
the world would be a better place if people could tap into that. I personally am just tapping into it because I wrote this book. I would say I really hit my stride with peace, joy, and freedom around 31 years old. So I'm really just getting started in walking in the fullness of this. So the saga and the journey continues.
Yeah, and it's so powerful because I think personally, I mean, self help books are great. I'm not opposed to them, but to me, I learned so much more and deeper and in a more substantial way when I'm hearing through a story, through something
Hmm.
that is real and an
Hmm.
experience. And to me, that's where most growth happens, at least. So I love it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful for you being here today. I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing, not only as a therapist, but as a writer, storyteller. I think it is so needed. It's so impactful. And every single
Hmm.
person that comes across your story is going to be impacted for the better.
Thank you. Thank you for holding space for me and giving me a platform to share about my story, and also getting to meet you and know a little bit about you. So I really enjoyed this.
Well, thank you. My final question, and then we go, is totally unrelated to
Okay.
everything we've talked about. But I
Okay.
ask everybody, I want to know what is something that you do that is ridiculous, but maybe to somebody else is a little bit relatable. It could be like an irrational fear, a useless talent that you have, a weird quirk, something that like the people closest to you would give you a hard time of. Like, if it's helpful, I'm really bad at song lyrics, like really bad. And it's kind of laughable. And there was this, what was that song years
Hmm.
ago in like the early 2000s? This is kind of a morbid joke, but it's too late to apologize. Do you know what song I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
For years, I was like, how is this allowed to be on the radio? Like, this is horrible. And everybody was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, he's saying it's too late to call a child. Like, he's like a predator. It's too late to call a child. And people were like, what are you talking about? So this whole time I thought he was saying like, it's too late to call a child. And I was like so angry. I was like, what are we doing? This is wrong. And people were like, Nicole, are you crazy? That's not what the words are. And it took me years for somebody to tell me.
That's pretty great. Something ridiculous that I do, because I'm crazy. So okay. It may not be spectacular, but this is what I got.
Let's
I
hear
am
it.
unapologetic in, we call it DNFing a book, which means did not
Okay.
finish. I am unapologetic in that. I don't care if I read one page. I don't care if I read 60%. I don't care if I'm one chapter until the end. When I am done and I
You're
don't want to
done.
read something anymore, I do not, and I will stop. And people will be like, so on my little book tracking app that I use, it's a running joke that the number of books on my DNF list is significantly higher than my finish list. And I finish a lot of books, okay? And people will look at it and they'll be like, you got classics in here. What didn't you like about such and such? And they want to debate it. And I'll be like, I didn't like it.
That's it.
And
Yeah.
I didn't keep reading it. I don't wanna. And so to some people, I'm ridiculous because they're like, wow, you'll just cut something off or whatever. And I said, isn't that an extension of what I'm trying to do in this era of my life, though, is not stick around places where it's not doing it for me? And I'm like, one of my friends joked because like I said, I started dating again in November, specifically men. And the dating pool is a whole different thing than it was when I started or when I was dating 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, "Oh, I thought you were with so and so." I was like, "No, that was like 3 guys ago. You gotta keep up."
Ah,
And one person would be like, "How do you do this?" And then one person made the connection. They said, "You know what? Johnzelle will DNF a book with no questions asked. Snip, snip. He moved on." And I said, "So he'll be just fine. If he likes a guy and then something goes wrong, he'll cut it right on off and move on to the next one." Yeah, I think that's something ridiculous about me because people would be like, "Oh, you got to give the book a chance or whatever. Oh, you got to wait until you get to the third book. That's when it gets really good." And then
the
I lean
third.
forward and I say I don't have to do anything but be black, pay taxes, and die. So I don't gotta finish a book. It'd be like, why didn't you? I didn't like it. It wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it
That's
is what it is.
that's
So
such a
that's
good
that's
one.
my answer, and I'm sticking to it.
I love it. I love it. I need to lean into that.
Yeah,
I'm not,
suffering
just
through a
stop.
book that you don't
Stop.
love.
Yeah,
Uh-uh.
a book or a
Life
show
is
or a
too short.
movie. Yeah. You're right.
Nah, no, life is too short. And I, the older I get, the more I realize my time has value. And we're therapists. We quite literally put a dollar cost on our time and the value of
Yep.
it. But that's beyond that. I'm not spending any of my time doing something I don't really want to do if I can help it. So
I
that's how
mean,
I feel about
as you
books.
should.
And I don't watch a lot of TV, but even with a show or a movie, I'll be like, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
But
That's so great.
yeah, thank you for having me. You take care.
Thank you so much to Johnzelle for being with us today. It was such an incredible conversation, and I learned so much from his incredibly vulnerable and impactful story. And I love that he talked about how he is still on this journey. He's still unlearning, he's still healing, still becoming. And I love that. You can find Johnzelle's book, Mixtape, a Memoir, wherever books are sold. As he talked about, it's told in tracks instead of chapters, and there's an actual real playlist that you can listen to as you read. You can follow him on Instagram at Johnzelle_ and check him out at his website, johnzelle.co. If this episode resonated with you, share it with somebody in your life who is navigating the messiness and the bothness of their own identity, because that's how this community grows, from one person to another, saying you aren't alone in this. And if you want more support navigating your own messy middle around identity, transitions, or just becoming, I've got a free resource just for you. You can find that below in the show notes or visit me on Instagram or my website to get connected. And if you really want to go another step and help out the show, hit follow so you don't miss an episode, and take just a second and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Those really are some of the most impactful things that you can do for the show. And as you go through this week, I want you to think about this. Do you feel like you are worthy of reciprocity? Are you giving, receiving, and loving yourself? Or are any of those things missing? You deserve reciprocity. You deserve to be liked, loved, and understood. And remember, life isn't either or. It's both. And you are allowed to hold all of it. Until next time.